Happy Saudi Saturday, everyone. What's going on? Happy Podcast Saturday. We're back here on an afternoon. Sorry that there is no Saturday Night's Greg event tonight, but I did end up having to work this evening. So we're going to come up here in normal time and discuss the news and everything that we've missed this week in pro wrestling. And I welcome you. Hope you guys are having a great weekend. Well, this is a pretty news-heavy episode as we get the big bomb dropped on us yesterday about WrestleMania 43 in 2027 heading to Saudi Arabia. Not too terribly shocking of an announcement, but still one that is just like, oh my God. But we kind of knew that was coming. Hell, the Royal Rumble is coming there in just a few months, and now they are getting WrestleMania 43. So we're going to talk about all of that and what that card could potentially be looking like the year after next at WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia. Also, just broke today the news that Andrade has left WWE. So we're going to talk about what we know about that situation. We'll also get into a couple of other news tidbits before we jump into a lot of what's going on in WWE and AEW. We had some interesting tidbits coming out of Raw this past week. We were up here on Monday to do a review for that. Of course, last night's SmackDown had a couple of interesting things. Brock ripped his britches, and Cody Rhodes has returned just in time to set up his match with Drew McIntyre at WrestlePalooza. So we'll talk a little bit about last night's SmackDown. We'll also talk about what's coming up this week on NXT as they are having their big homecoming event and returning to Full Sail. That's pretty cool. Also, AEW wrapped up its 2300 residency this week, this past Wednesday on Dynamite, and then I think they taped Collision, which airs in a couple of hours. They taped that on Thursday, I believe. So they are now done with the 2300 arena as we head into All Out, and we will preview both the All Out and WrestlePalooza cards, and we'll try to analyze and look at which show we think is going to do better, because it's going to be an interesting day next Saturday, 1 week from today. So we won't be here for a podcast, but we will be here for a double review, and I'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Other than that, though, we'll probably just talk about the week's worth of news and goings-on and results and how the pay-per-views are looking and how you guys are feeling in the chat. So hope you guys are having a good one today. This will probably be a nice 2-hour podcast, and then I got to get out of here and head to work. But it is the weekend, and you know what that means. We got podcasts on Saturday, and we have watch-alongs on Sunday. Link is already up for tomorrow's watch-along. I put a poll up on YouTube and let you guys decide this one, and you guys have selected Unforgiven 2000. We're going to be here tomorrow night at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. We will be eyeballing whatever NFL game is on as well, like we do every football season, and we're going to watch Unforgiven 2000. We've watched 98, 99, and 2001, but we've never done 2000. So I put up a poll for 3 September pay-per-views that we have not done yet. I had 2 Fall Brawls, 95 and 97, and then I had this Unforgiven 2000, which won by pretty much a landslide. I believe over 60% of the vote went to Unforgiven 2000. So tomorrow night we will watch the return of Stone Cold Steve Austin after he was out nearly a year receiving that neck surgery. And I don't think I've watched Unforgiven 2000 maybe once or twice in my life. So tomorrow will be kind of fun because I don't really know much else about the card other than that. I'm pretty sure Rock defends the title in a 4-way, correct? And then Austin comes back and I think he stuns Shane and he mixes it up with Steve Blackman or something. So we're going to watch all of that tomorrow night. Make sure you're here tomorrow evening as we return to our regular classic watch-alongs. It's been a couple of weeks since we've had a normal long pay-per-view on Sundays because we had Forbidden Door, then we had Clash in Paris, and things have been a little bit weird. So we are here tomorrow night for that. Also, we are going to be here this Thursday. No link up yet, but we will be here this Thursday, probably right around this time that we're going live now, and we're going to predict WrestlePalooza and All Out. We'll also get into any wrestling news that might be going on. It'll be like a little mini pod on Thursday ahead of the 2 big pay-per-views 1 week from today, next Saturday. Now, next Saturday, since Tony Khan has moved All Out to an earlier start time, I really wanted to do a double split-screen watch-along and watch both pay-per-views. I thought that would be really fun. Tony moved the show. Now one is going to come first, or AEW is going to come first. WWE is going to come later on in the afternoon. So the plan for next week is to do a watch-along of WrestlePalooza only. So I'm going to watch AEW All Out here on my own and live tweet and make notes on the show. And then once WrestlePalooza starts, we will watch that together, and then we will stick around after the show and review both pay-per-views. So that'll kind of be on schedule for next, or the schedule for next Saturday night. So it technically will be a Saturday night's Greg event, but it's going to be focused mostly on the pay-per-view results of the two big shows next Saturday, and that should be really, really interesting. In terms of next weekend, next Saturday will probably be the last. I'm not even sure if we're going to do a watch-along next Sunday, because I'm about to move out of here in about 9 or 10 days. So we got about 2 or 3 streams left with that background behind me, and then it's all coming down. I'll try to leave that up through next Saturday. 1 week from today will probably be the end of it, actually. Yeah, probably next Saturday night as we do our All Out and WrestlePalooza reviews. This will be the final stream with this setup behind me. I still might do another video or two in this house, but I'm going to have everything broken down behind me before we move into the new place, which is set for the 23rd currently. So things are changing around here, so if the schedule is a little bit weird at the end of September, I apologize in advance for that. It's just because I'm dealing with a lot, and moving can be a pain in the ass, and I'm sure you guys understand that. So some changes going on around here, but good ones, and I'm excited for the new podcast setup in the new place. I'm really looking forward to kind of setting that up and putting it all together. I've got it all drawn out and mapped out. I've purchased everything I need to purchase off Amazon and ready to make my little YouTube corner over there. So yeah, pretty soon this is going to be the end of this. But anyway, let's get into stuff here today, because it's a big one. Big news day. Lots going on. Lots to discuss. Thank you, everyone who is here. I'm going to say some quick hellos in the chat, and then we will get moving. Do me a favor, smash that thumbs up button if you don't mind. Make sure you are a subscriber. Super chats are open as well, and I will be getting to all of those as we get through here. But let me say hello to Isaac, my boy, Zane G. We got Melissa here. We got Tatanani, Percy, the new one, Colin Wright, Delayed Gratz, Damian Drain. I always lose my place. Damian Drain, there we go. We've got JL in the house. Good to see you. Mike Rouse, William Cullen. We got Gilbert Arbalo. I see Rodrigo in here as well, along with Luke McAllister dropping in a nice $10 super chat. Thank you for that, my friend. What's up, Greg? I'm not surprised, but nonetheless disgusted with WWE's decision to hold WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia before the UK, especially with how long we've been begging for one. Money talks. Those last 2 words is the whole story right there, Luke, because I think everybody is in agreement with you. If anybody overseas, you know, we've done a couple of Canadian WrestleManias, so they have gone international, but they haven't gone outside of the continental US ever. And I was I think we were all hoping that if that ever happened, London would be their first stop, or somewhere in the UK. But money talks, and Saudi Arabia is paying an obscene amount of money to basically purchase themselves a WrestleMania, and probably even be able to buy which matches they want. And I do not like that concept at all. But we will be talking about that. And I agree with you completely that UK should have came first, but money talks. Thanks for being here, Luke. Jay Lambo, good to see you. Shane Belfus is in the house. So is Ben Espinoza. We got Shell Shock in here as well. Fox Star Killer. Yeah, Unforgiven, Rock, Taker, Kane, Benoit for the title in the main event. And that's right, the debut of Austin's Disturbed version. So we're going to watch that tomorrow. Hopefully there's not a Peacock edit on that. There might be. We'll find out tomorrow. If you guys want to look ahead and find out, you can. Otherwise, we'll be surprised tomorrow if WWE keeps the Disturbed version intact. Sometimes they don't for stuff like that, but hopefully they will. Good to see Austin. Chris FX, man, you are an OG, man. Good to see you in here as always, Chris. Hope you are doing well. I remember talking to you all the way back 15 years ago, man. Shit, where do you live? Like Tennessee or Memphis or Nashville or something like that, right? Because I remember the whole Occupy Raw thing with you and all that. Good to see you again, man. Everybody else chiming in, welcome. Thank you so much for being here, and happy podcast Saturday to you. All right, let's start getting into the news here. Let me just get myself a little centered here. There we go. Feel a little bit better. Right on. Well, as you can see here, top story right over to the left of your screen there is, of course, WWE reaching an agreement with Saudi Arabia to hold WrestleMania 43 over there. Now, this was actually leaked a couple of days before, and this was leaked even further back a few weeks back. Now, a few weeks back, there was the story that was floating around about WWE holding 2 WrestleManias in 2027. Where maybe, how they did that greatest Royal Rumble thing to where maybe if Saudi Arabia is demanding a WrestleMania, maybe since it's 2 nights, they split it up, one night over there, one night over here, or just pretend to give them a WrestleMania and then still have the actual WrestleMania here in the States. Well, it sounds like Saudi wasn't going to go for that. We're not able to fool them anymore. A few years back, they didn't know what the fuck was going on. They thought Yokozuna was still alive, so they just sent out their lookalikes, and WWE, I think, was taking advantage of Saudi Arabia at first and all the money they were giving them and kind of just giving them glorified house shows. Remember those early Saudi shows back in 2018 and whatnot? They were just kind of throwaway shows. They meant nothing. They were just given to them, but they didn't really have too much bearing on, what was going on currently storyline-wise in WWE. I even remember like the first one had like John Cena versus Triple H, right? And it felt like just an exhibition. It was just a walk-through match. So simple. A few years later, you got the Goldberg matches, then you got Shawn coming back to the ring and that debacle against the Brothers of Destruction. And, some of those shows were just ass. But then I guess the royal family or whatever over there started wising up and said, no, we want actual real shows. And then they started doing your title changes. And now we've had actual PPVs over there, Elimination Chambers, right? And what else have we had over there? We're about to have a Rumble, something else. We've had lots of shows over there now that actually mean something. And we've seen major championship title changes over there as well. So with pay-per-views being held over there now, Royal Rumbles being held over there now, you knew it was only a matter of time before they did, in fact, get a WrestleMania. And it was going to be all centered around money. That's what it was going to come down to. Without the money, I don't think WWE would really ever leave the continental U.S. to do a show overseas unless it was the UK. I think that's the only place. You pack out Wembley, then WrestleMania absolutely would be hugely successful over there. But otherwise, I never thought that they would really leave. But when you're talking about the amount of money that we're talking about here, it's like they can't say no, not when they're not with the shareholders and the money that everybody stands to make. WWE is just going to go to the highest bidder now, which is why we saw them back out of WrestleMania that we thought was going to be in Minnesota, and now it's going to be in Vegas here next year again for the second year in a row. But they aren't going to three-peat because in 2027, WrestleMania 43 will be held in Saudi Arabia. WWE, had announced that they are going to be holding I wouldn't say a press conference because the press or the media and fans, nobody was permitted to this thing. This was going to be some big game-changing announcement in Las Vegas that WWE made yesterday. They went live on YouTube to make this big announcement, and we had a feeling based on the leak that we had already gotten about WrestleMania 43 being held over there that this was what it was going to be. And sure enough, the YouTube video goes live. You see the WrestleMania 43 logo there with the Riyadh season stuff. Joe Tessitore welcomes us, and he brings out this parade of wrestlers, and boy, do they look thrilled to be there. You've got Bianca Belair, Charlotte, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, Stephanie Vaquer, Logan Paul, and Seth Rollins. They then bring out Triple H to make the announcement official, along with Turki Al-Sheikh, who was the president of the Sports Authority thing or whatever, to join them. And when you look at the picture there and look at the image, look at all those wrestlers. Look at Bianca and Charlotte and Seth and Logan. Look at them all. Not a single smile to be found. And it was really tough to watch this. I mean, once the announcement was made official and Triple H said WrestleMania 43 will be in Saudi Arabia, why do you need to keep watching after that? The YouTube chat was hilarious. It was just a never-ending stream of you sold out and you sold out. And that WWE expects that. They don't give a single solitary fuck about the backlash they are getting here because there's just too much money. There's too much money being paid to them to where any pushback that they are going to get, they are willing to receive because of the amounts of billions of dollars here that we're talking about that they get from Saudi Arabia. So they are more than willing to accept the backlash here, and they know the backlash that they're going to get. I'm sure they weren't surprised by this, which is why the media wasn't even allowed to be here for this. They didn't want to take any questions about it. They didn't want to hear any reactions from the crowd there. They just wanted to be able to make their announcement and then have all of the superstars say a few words. I didn't really catch anybody's comments other than a couple of tidbits from Bianca Belair, where she said she's very proud to be a part of the advancements and women's rights over there or something, which is just so gross. Triple H said something recently the other day where, they're very proud that they can be a part of that. I'm like, you don't give a crotch chop fuck about any of that. And if you do the slightest bit of research, this de facto dictatorship over there really hasn't made that much progress with their women. And those early Saudi shows, they were running those propaganda videos. And then when the journalist Jamal Khashoggi was literally chopped up at the consulate there, they kind of pulled back from that. And even that first Saudi show, I don't even think they were really mentioning that it was there. I remember they were just not even really mentioning a lot about Saudi Arabia. They're just saying crown jewel, crown jewel, crown jewel. They kind of had to go through with the show. And you were worried that the relationship might not stay that strong after that, especially after that plane ride nonsense happened, with the big famous selfie of Luke Harper just sitting there looking pissed off. And you didn't think that this relationship was really going to last perhaps long term, but it is, and it has only gotten stronger, and now the show of all shows is heading over to Saudi Arabia. So here's what Fightful Select had to say about what they know about this deal, and we're also going to talk about who could possibly be on this card. But here's what Fightful Select had to say about this announcement yesterday. The news itself was released via Snapchat video by Turki Al-Sheikh earlier in the week, well ahead of when WWE planned. And that was kind of what we talked about. We had seen that they were saying something about WrestleMania coming there, but we had not gotten any official announcement. So he released this way before WWE had planned, to the point that some in the industry familiar with Turkey thought it was a fake because they were baffled it would be released that early. However, a press release in Saudi Arabia briefly went out this week before being pulled. Earlier this year, Blake Avignon of the MMA Draw reported that TKO had to have Nick Khan step in to the Netflix UFC talks because Turkey and Netflix executive Bella Baharia kept clashing. There were some in WWE that wished that Turkey had not tipped off the announcement, and others who thought it was intentional to kick up buzz. The majority of WWE talent aren't bonused for working shows in Saudi Arabia, and it's simply worked into their deals as part of their contracts now. So I was curious about that. There was word earlier this year that there was word earlier this year of WWE attempting to do a WrestleMania branded event in Saudi Arabia while still doing a WrestleMania event here in North America. We're told by sources connected to the Saudi shows, the government made it clear they wanted an actual WrestleMania. See, you can't fool them anymore. WWE sources also suggested that this is why WWE has gone so hard in promoting WrestlePalooza as a huge event out of the gate and plan to moving forward. I hope they number the Paloozas. I do. I hope they number them. WrestlePalooza 2. Maybe they can get a Soundgarden song or a Pearl Jam song, or there was a hell of a lineup at Lollapalooza 2. But I want to see them numbered. WrestlePalooza 2, WrestlePalooza 3. Let's number these. Let's not just call them WrestlePaloozas. Let's number them. I think that might be fun. Fightful Select finishes up by saying WWE has had a long relationship with Saudi dating back to 2017. Outside of the plane ride incident in 2019, we're told the relationship has been a smooth one. Wrestlers we spoke to said that while the Saudi Arabia shows said that the trip, this is a funny sentence. Basically, the wrestlers that they spoke to said that the trips largely felt like they were safe for them to compete at this point. So nobody is too uncomfortable these days with flying over there. They feel relatively safe. They're all treated well, and all is fine in that regard. I was curious about the pay, though. So apparently, that's all worked into your contracts. But for WrestleMania, if WWE is getting some obscene amount of money for WrestleMania, you would think that the talent there would also receive obscene amounts of money for performing over there. But if it's all worked into their contracts, they might be screwed. But some of the people coming in for the big matches might not be. The name on the top of the list is The Rock. The Rock, who we thought might be done with wrestling completely after we saw that picture of him all skinny, and now he's in his 50s. I mean, what can he really do? But it sounds like they really, really want The Rock, and negotiations may or may not be ongoing. Dave Meltzer thinks that they are. Fightful Select thinks that they're not. We'll have to wait and see. But clearly, that makes a lot of sense that Saudi Arabia, you would have to assume, is going to want maybe some major names. These are the people that wanted Yokozuna and the Ultimate Warrior for a match. They're aware that Hulk Hogan is dead, right? Do they know this? Like, how many dead wrestlers do you think they're going to request matches from? You know, you can't send out a bunch of lookalikes. So you got to think that it really could possibly be a parade of legends. There used to be debates years ago about, is WWE relying too heavily on legends? They're going to rely heavily on legends for WrestleMania 43 for sure, because they don't have a choice. They don't have a choice. Saudi is calling the shots. They are going to dictate who's going to be on this card and who's possibly even going to be in the main event. They're going to tell WWE which matches they want to see, and WWE is going to do it. Think about that. Think about that. You know, like, compared to all the other WrestleManias in the past, what if, you know, at WrestleMania 1, Madison Square Garden demanded to have certain matches? What if Pontiac Silverdome demanded, no, we don't want Hogan and Andre, we want Hogan and Steamboat or something? I don't know. You know, like, just imagine that we're getting to that point now where you're allowing governments to decide what your matches are going to be. It's all about money. And it's so much money that, you know, TKO, you know, trying to make their money, or Endeavor trying to make their money back from the purchase, obviously, too. And we've seen these obscenely high ticket prices these days that, you know, are starting to really, really turn the fans off. Even one of the TKO execs said Vince McMahon was primarily in charge of pricing out tickets in the past because he had families in mind. WWE doesn't give a fuck about families anymore. They care about being able to charge the highest absolute prices that they possibly can for every one of their shows, and then brag during the pay-per-views that they broke all sorts of gate records. It's really, really gross. And now WrestleMania 43 in Saudi, you know, spare me your outrage. I'm not going to be outraged over this because this is a relationship that's been ongoing for the past 8 years. When did this start? 2017? So we're talking about 8 years-ish that WWE's had a relationship with Saudi Arabia. From the minute that relationship started and the amount of money that was being talked about and discussed, you knew that pay-per-views and even WrestleManias were very likely to go over there. WWE isn't the only American company or even sports brand that does business over there. They've got the Live Golf, and a lot of American companies do business with Saudi Arabia. It sucks, you know, and it sucks that we're losing a WrestleMania to Saudi, but that's just kind of the way life in business is. And WWE's priorities now are to please the shareholders before the fans. Fans are second. Fans might not even be second. We might be third, fourth, or fifth, you know, at this point. And we've seen the issues with WWE's creative lately and these formulaic shows, and Triple H's booking philosophy. In some aspects it works, in some aspects it completely sucks. And now, you know, stuff like this isn't going to be making it any better because they're going to have to load it up with a bunch of stars coming out of retirement. You know, if they offer Stone Cold $15-20 million for a match, what is he going to say? You know, what if they're like, we want Stone Cold versus CM Punk, and we'll pay them both $20 million each to get that done? I'd do it too. I'd jump in that ring and make it a three-way. Wouldn't be a good three-way, but hey, I'd be getting paid. So what's the difference? You know, think about the money I mean, Shawn Michaels has a chance to write. Like, what's the big deal if he comes back now? He already fucked up his retirement, and he fucked it up in such a way that we still talk about how disappointing and depressing his return was after he had that great final match with The Undertaker, you know, 1 year after, one of the best wrestling matches I've ever seen in my fucking life. He retires, you know, on top of the world and at peace, and gets his closure on everything, even with Bret Hart. And then because Money talks. I'd like to know what Shawn made for that match. They come back and do Shawn and Triple H versus Brothers of Destruction, and it was arguably the worst professional wrestling match in the history of professional wrestling. And that's the Michael Jordan of professional wrestling that was in that match. Maybe Shawn has a chance. You know? Shawn Michaels versus AJ Styles. WrestleMania 43. You know, if AJ hangs around for one more year, I don't think he's gonna. We're going to talk about AJ later and what he said on Monday night. So, you know, you think about Rock, Steve Austin, and Shawn Michaels are three wrestlers that I think probably could still technically work. It was only 3 years ago that Austin had that brawl with Kevin Owens, although by the time we get to WrestleMania 43, Austin's going to be into his 60s. He'll be 61 or 62 years old. You know, Undertaker, if they want him to have a match, what, he's going to be 93? Are they going to want Ric Flair to stumbling out there and, you know, not only having his last match ever, but doing the last thing he ever does ever? You know, they want somebody dying in the ring here. What's going to happen? I mean, I fear that we could see Steve Austin, The Rock, The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, and Ric Flair all in the ring at WrestleMania 43. Like it could possibly happen. And, you know, maybe Flair is a stretch, but you got to think Austin and Rock have got to be two names that Saudi Arabia would really, really want to be a big part of this. You know, maybe Austin and Rock, maybe it's a tag, maybe it's Rock and Punk versus Austin and Cody. I don't know. You know, there's all sorts of things you could do. And I think when WrestleMania 43 rolls around, we need to just understand that it's going to be a different WrestleMania. It's going to be one that's going to be largely dictated by the government. They're going to be, you know, really pushing for certain matches, and WWE is going to have to creatively set all that up. Now, they've got a long time. They've got, you know, a year and a half to get all these things lined up. So once they have everybody, you know, in agreement and they know who's coming back, I think Jericho's probably going to be a part of this show. I guarantee you Chris Jericho will have a match at WrestleMania 43 in Saudi Arabia. I absolutely guarantee it. So I would say Jericho, Rock, Austin, Shawn, probably very likely Undertaker. It just depends on if he can go or not. And if nobody can physically be in a match, they're at least going to be involved in some way in the show, you would think, in a big way. And any other major legend, you know, that can physically do something or that they want to see, they're going to request, and then WWE's going to have to contact them and negotiate and figure out how they can get this done. So it's going to be interesting. We're going to be on a year and a half WrestleMania 43 watch, talking about this a lot, like who's the latest person in talks. And, you know, by this point, is anybody in AEW's contract coming up and they might see dollar signs in the future? Like, is there any major star in AEW who only has 18 months or a year left on his contract and like, shit, I really want to stay with AEW, but man, I could go to WWE, work WrestleMania 43 and make fucking $3 million or something like that. You know, you never know. So WrestleMania 43 is going to be an interesting card. I wish we could kind of blink and fast forward and see what that is going to look like, who's going to be on the card, you know, who your champions are going to be, who your winners of the Rumble are going to be, and how that whole thing is going to be set up. And I'm assuming it will be a 2-day event back-to-back, I guess in Riyadh or whatever. And it's going to be probably in March because it's going to be taking place during Riyadh season, which I think only runs from October or November through March. So this probably won't be an April pay-per-view. I did not see any date on this. I don't think they released a date, right? So that still has to be worked out. But WrestleMania 43 in Saudi Arabia, a 10 a.m. WrestleMania. The idea of that is horrifying because I live on the West Coast and I hate these early morning PPVs, but we knew it was going to happen at some point. And I think it's kind of a waste of time to sit here and be shocked and mad and all of this. It's not like they've never been to Saudi Arabia before. They've already had a dozen plus shows over there. We know what the relationship is. We know how, you know, fucked up it is over there. And we felt that way ever since the Jamal Khashoggi was murdered. And there's really nothing we can do about that. This is just business. This is just the way it is. And there's no sense in being outraged because we are getting a Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia in just a couple of months. We've seen many shows now over the last several years in Saudi Arabia. Major title changes. We've seen some of the worst matches of all time, and we've seen some matches that are pretty good. We've seen some decent PPVs over there, and we've had some good events over there. I mean, the best you can do is just watch it and try your best to be entertained without having any of the ugliness, without trying to focus on any of the ugliness, but it's really kind of hard to do that. But WrestleMania 43 is going to be in Saudi Arabia. It probably won't be the last WrestleMania there. Like, think about this. If WrestleMania 43 is hugely successful and Saudi Arabia is just glowing with happiness and they're just overjoyed with how well it went, that they want to do it again. And they say, hey, remember what we paid you this time? We'll double it if you come back next year. Guess what? WrestleMania 44 in Saudi Arabia. There is a very good chance that Saudi Arabia could own WWE one day. I absolutely believe that they could purchase the company. There's already a headquarters. I think WWE already has an office over there. It's only a matter of time, man. Only a matter of time. But this game-changing announcement that they made, I mean, was it really that game-changing? This is what we knew. It was greed. It was a greed-changing announcement. They're doing all of this for money. They don't give a shit the backlash. They don't care how many tweets they get. They don't care how absolutely bonkers their chat was during the live stream of just this never-ending stream of you sold out that just went on for miles and miles. They recapped the announcement yesterday or last night at SmackDown and at Worlds Collide to a chorus of boos from the audience. So the fans are going to be vocal about this, but at the same time, this is something that we should have seen coming, and nobody should be super shocked by this. Like, we knew this was coming. So we will follow it over the next 18 months or so and see what they wind up having planned. And as we get into next year, 1 year from now, we should start getting a relatively okay idea of what the card might be looking like. 1 year from now, after SummerSlam, whoever the champions are, all right, we can probably see this person going to WrestleMania or this person going to WrestleMania or whatever. We might have a little bit of an idea, but it's probably going to be about a year before we have any idea what this card could even potentially look like. We will have to see. But Saudi Arabia is throwing some money around, and they have now landed themselves a WrestleMania. And there isn't anything we can do about that. So everybody has their own limits, I got to say, everybody, wrestles with their own moral dilemmas, and we all do that. And I've been doing that for a long time with WWE. And, I'm not there yet to the point where I'm just like, oh, I'm just never going to watch them again. But I feel like they are on track to getting there one day because they're just not endearing themselves to their audience. And I definitely see how WWE is going to still maintain great business because of all of the money they're getting from the media rights deals and all the money they're getting from Saudi Arabia and the crazy ticket prices that they charge for their shows. But you are going to see, things in decline. We're already noticing that. Usually the ratings go first, then the attendance follows. Because back in the day, even in the Monday Night Wars, when WCW was sucking, when they started to really suck after the NWO got watered down, Nitro was still crushing it. Ratings was still good. Crowds were still full, so it takes a while. It doesn't happen overnight, but a lot of fans are starting to get turned off just by, WWE and who they are and these crazy ticket prices. And I think you are going to see, a decline at some point in something. We're already seeing a massive decline in creative where there isn't a Raw or a SmackDown or a Dynamite for that matter that's really must see right now. I'm not like chomping at the bit. Can't wait to get to Monday night to see what they're going to do. Can't wait to see what's going to happen on SmackDown. And in AEW, like I'll talk about later, they need to step it up here, man. Because the 2300 Arena residency was fine, but that's all it was fine. The Daniel Garcia heel turn on Wednesday night. It was crickets when he took off the hood. And all that stuff was good, but it wasn't great, and if you got a company that's starting to turn off their audience on one side, the other company needs to take advantage of that. I would expect WWE to do the same thing to AEW like they did. Fans are really kind of getting sick of all the drama over there and the brawls and the fights and the CM Punk stuff and the Jack Perry stuff and the Elite stuff. Andrade was back there getting in fights. We'll talk about Andrade in a minute. And, a lot of fans were kind of getting turned off by just the lack of, cohesion or professionalism or morale that's going on back there. And, Tony Khan's leadership has been brought into question, and WWE took advantage of that. They signed Cody, they signed Jay, they signed CM Punk. They counter-programmed them. They tried to capitalize on some of the negative feedback AEW was getting from the fans. AEW needs to realize they got to do the same thing when it happens to WWE. When WWE starts turning off their audience, which it will happen, no hot period lasts forever. Every hot period cools off. Every company that's riding high eventually, hits the lull. Happens with AEW, happens with WWE, happens with WCW, happens with ECW, happens with all of them. It's nothing new. So companies need to be able to pounce when things start turning the corner for their competition. And AEW has an opportunity, at least an opportunity, nothing guaranteed, but they at least have an opportunity here to, make some noise over on their side to get some of those fans that are maybe just getting a little bit turned off by what WWE is doing and say, hey, look and see what we're doing over here. The problem is what they're doing over there is fine if you're a wrestling fan. I enjoyed Dynamite just fine on Wednesday, but it's not great. It's not must-see TV. It's not, oh my God, did you see that match? You got to see it. You might have some great matches here or there, but just the product in general, nothing is really setting the world on fire. There's not some big-time major star that everybody is clamoring to see or wants to see more of. You got your Tony Storms, you got your Hangmans, you got your Codys. You got plenty of people in the industry that are very, very over right now, but that's almost not enough. WWE is kind of relying on that. WWE is relying on the overness of their Codys and their Ripleys and their Usos and whatnot, and AEW, they don't have the star power to that degree. They're, relying more on their wrestling and the strength of their PPVs, and they've got some good stories there as well. But, nothing is must see. Really from either show right now, or from either company, I should say. So, if WWE is going to start turning off their audience with these crazy ticket sales and these gross relationships with dictatorships and whatnot, AEW needs to step up their game so fans have somewhere else to go. But right now, they're not really offering a whole lot, as an alternative for wrestling fans. So I do fear, that wrestling is starting to slide into maybe another lull period. And I don't want to see WWE return to 2019 because back then they were the ones with the hard cams all tarped off and 3,000 people in a 20,000 seat basketball arena to watch SmackDown. It sucked, and I don't want to see them go back to that. And if they did, I hope AEW steps it up, but I'm not too terribly confident in them right now either. So I feel like just wrestling in general, I kind of wish it was 2023 again. You know what I mean? Just weird. But it's only going to get weirder, and it'll be interesting to see how the WrestleMania 43 situation shapes up. But before we get to that, we have to have WrestleMania 42 back again in Vegas next year. So we have to get through that show first. We'll see how it all goes. The other big story of the day or of the week, this just broke about, hour or two ago. I was doing one last check. I cruised over to Fightful Select over on Patreon. I'm like, is there any other stories I need to mention? And 3 minutes, the story was 3 minutes old when I clicked over there. Andrade gone from WWE. Wow. I was thinking about Andrade last night because Rey Fenix faced Sami Zayn for the U.S. title, and I was wondering, last time we saw Andrade, they were kind of teaming together. And I was thinking, maybe it'd be cool if they just put them back together because I haven't seen Andrade in a while, I guess since, SummerSlam. And had him on my mind last night. And then today we learned that he is gone from WWE. So here's what Fightful Select had to say about Andrade leaving. We were told that this would not have been a case of his contract simply expiring, as he had more than 18 months on his deal when he signed last year. Fightful Select is told that his departure is isolated and not connected to any additional cuts. Fightful was told in August that Andrade was not on the company's internal injury list. When we asked about him not being booked for a certain match, we were told, quote, if it was possible, he would be. We're told that the departure had been in the works, but as of now, we do not know the circumstances surrounding it. He has not been backstage at SmackDown as of late either. Mark of bodyslam.net put it on our radar that he was moved to the alumni section and that he could be done with the company. One WWE source indicated that the departure had been in the works for at least a week and that this did affect immediate creative plans after SummerSlam, which was his last appearance. A number of talent we spoke to had no idea what was going on or that Andrade had left or was leaving the company. So we don't know yet if this was a straight release. Like this sounds to me, with just, if I had to guess, it sounds like he might have wanted out. He might have requested his release and WWE granted it, which if that's the case, he's going to have a no-compete. I saw MJF already tweeting out that he's going to be down in Mexico facing Mystico or something and inviting him down there. So it would be nice if Andrade could turn up somewhere right away, but if this was a situation where he felt like he wanted to leave the company, I seriously doubt WWE is just going to let him out of his contract free and clear and you can go work for whoever you want tomorrow. I doubt that that's the case, but we really don't know. We also don't know why. If I had to guess, it's because since coming back to WWE, he really did a whole lot of nothing. Now, upon his return to WWE, it was only a short time after that we learned that he got a divorce from Charlotte. They were happily married, or at least so we thought. And Andrade and Charlotte, I think, are on the same brand, right, on SmackDown. And they seem to be on good terms because I saw Andrade wishing her happy birthday one week or that, on her birthday that one time. And everything seemed okay, but still, exes working together, that can be weird. So maybe it's a combination of the divorce and maybe he's just not feeling that fulfilled in WWE, or because of his divorce, if he feels that's going to hurt him politically, in creative, why are they going to bend over backwards to push me, when I'm no longer with Charlotte, I don't have that, connection anymore. Or maybe he realized that, the grass really wasn't greener over here. Miro might be learning the same thing, or Rusev might be learning the same thing right now. We don't know. And there's no telling what really led to this. But based on how Andrade was used since coming back, if you wanted to think that maybe it had something to do with him just not being happy with how he's being used, that would hold up, because I don't think the fans have been too happy with how he's been being used either. So maybe he just wanted out and they let him go. And like I said, if that's the case, I doubt very seriously that he's able to wrestle anywhere he wants free and clear. If they let him out of his contract early, if he requested Triple H, hey, just not working out, do you mind letting me go? And Triple H has a long history with Andrade, back to the black and gold NXT days. So maybe Triple H did him a solid. Yeah, we will let you go. Got to give you a 90-day, but we understand. And maybe they let him go. And that's, and like I said, without knowing the circumstances, if it was hypothetically a circumstance like that, then props to WWE. This is what I've been trying to say to Triple H and Tony Khan in these type of situations. If you do have someone there that doesn't want to be there, provided they're not a Roman Reigns level star or something, you're talking about a star the level of Andrade in either company. If someone like him approaches you and say, hey, I'm just not loving it here, can we work something out, please, where I can just be let out of my contract? You should always let that person go. Each situation is different. It's all got to be judged on a case-by-case basis. I get that. But in general, if somebody like Andrade approaches his boss and says, hey, I know I got a year and a half left, but I would like to leave. Can we please work something out and will you let me go? And if you approach that respectively, respectfully, and professionally, then I think you should always let that person go, whether you're Triple H or Tony Khan. The answer should always be yes. Now, again, this might have been a WWE decision. They might have decided to release Andrade. We don't even know. But if it was Andrade requesting this and WWE granted him his release, even if they give him a 90-day, which sucks, hey, at least they let him go. And at least he can now get out. So could he go back? Could he actually go back to AEW? That would be crazy if he did, but I could see it happening. He may be turned off by the concept of contracts. He might not want to do that anymore. Maybe he wants to work some matches in AEW, but not necessarily be under contract to them. I don't know. Or if he does sign a contract, he's now had two disappointments in both companies. If he goes back to AEW, say, I want an out clause. Like, you can't bench me. If you bench me for 3 months, I can leave. So at least protect yourself there. Yes, I want to come back. I want to work for you, but I do not want to be under contract for a year eating sandwiches and catering. Either use me or let me go. And so I think wrestlers should start working that stuff into their contracts. If I'm not injured and I'm benched for any more than 2 months, I get to leave. Maybe he'll work that out. But I think it's a possibility he could go to AEW. I don't think a bridge was burned there. He had that incident with Sammy Guevara, but for the most part, I think he left under good terms. He had his final match at the World's End that year, and he faced Miro, right? Tony Khan was very complimentary to Andrade in the post-show scrum. So I don't think that things necessarily ended badly there. Andrade just wasn't happy, and he wanted to leave. He went back to WWE and realized that it wasn't really great there either. So maybe he just wants to go back to Mexico. Maybe he's more comfortable there. That could happen as well. And maybe he can find his way back into AEW through those avenues. Maybe he goes to New Japan. There's no telling. But whatever Andrade does, best of luck to him. As a fan of his, I'm really bummed out that it just hasn't been able, that things haven't worked out for him in either company, because, man, he had that run in NXT, and I thought he was going to be terrific, and then coming to the main roster and then getting released, going to AEW, you think they're going to use him right. He was in some good matches there, but, he was never really a top star or a major contender. Goes back to WWE thinking, oh, things will be better over there with Triple H in charge. They weren't, and now he's gone from there. So whatever the future holds for Andrade, we wish him the best. He still has many years ahead of him if he wants to continue to be a wrestler, because he's very, very, very good, and he can be a champion or a main eventer in any promotion, in my opinion. So I hope wherever he goes, he lands on his feet. And I hope, most importantly, that he's happy there, because just it feels like he's too good of a talent to not be able to find his way. He's too good of a talent for things to not work out in either company. You mean to tell me between everybody in AEW and everybody in WWE, nobody can figure out something significant for this guy who's clearly capable of performing on a main event level? We can't think of anything substantial or significant or decent for him to do. He was just lost in the shuffle in both companies, and he's too good to be lost in the shuffle. There are some guys that are always going to be lost in the shuffle. That's just going to happen. Andrade stands out. He stands out as better than that to me. And the fact that neither company has been able to figure it out with him is disappointing, and that could be due to a number of things. We don't know. But either way, Andrade gone from WWE, and I'm hoping that maybe later this week or this weekend, we learn some more details about his release and whether or not he's going to have a no-compete. If I had to guess, I'd say there's a 99% chance he has a no-compete. I just can't see WWE granting him a release if requested, and then also allowing him just free and clear to go. I just don't see that happening. So I would assume that he's got a no-compete, but we're not going to know for sure until we learn more information about it. All we can do is wish Andrade well in his future endeavors, whatever they may be. That was a story that kind of shocked me today. There's some other news tidbits here. We're going to log into this here internet. I think I'm going to use America Online. And I'm going to log on to the internet here, and we're going to find out what other wrestling news we want to mention, because I only have like a couple of things I want to talk about, and then we will get into last night's SmackDown and last night's Worlds Collide. MJF has been busy. He got married on September 5th. Then last Saturday on September 6th, one day later, he showed up on Collision. Then he went off to Winnipeg to film yet another movie. He is going to be in Silent Night 2. Now, I haven't seen Silent Night 1. That's got, Hopper from Stranger Things, right? People have said good things about it, but I never saw it. So maybe this Christmas I'll catch up on the Silent Night so I can be ready for the sequel when it comes out. But MJF is off filming another movie, and poor Alicia, too, still sitting there with no honeymoon. Max, if you're busy, I wouldn't mind. I could probably fit it into my schedule. Max, if you want, I could always take her on the honeymoon, if you'd like. I mean, I know you're busy, so if you got to do the movie and, AEW needs you and Alicia needs a honeymoon, I'll go. I'll do it. Just shoot me a DM if you want to set it up, and I'll be happy to take your place. At least take that off your hands, that way you don't have to worry about it. So if you're looking for someone to go, spend a weekend in some tropical island with Alicia, I could do that for you. Just let me know. Hit me up. Also, some sad news to report. WWE's 15-year tradition of a day after Christmas house show at Madison Square Garden is over. This was reported by WrestleVotes Radio this week, and apparently there is going to be a day after Christmas show, but it's going to be in Baltimore. Baltimore. Now, Baltimore has a history, goes way back with WWE to their early days. I think some of their recording studios used to be there, back in the Capitol Wrestling days and whatnot. But MSG has been such a fun tradition. WWE really has scaled back their live events anyway, so the post-Christmas show is usually really good. And there's some decent matches on there. It's usually a sellout, and it's a wonderful, wonderful tradition for people there in New York City. It's not happening anymore. It's going to be in Baltimore instead. And when you just look at that situation on the surface, I'm like, well, you're still running a show. It'd be one thing if they weren't going to do any show the day after Christmas. Then that's just, okay, over. Good. The talent gets to stay at home with their families an extra day, because you can give them Christmas Day off all you want. What good does that do if they got to get up at 4 o'clock in the fucking morning the next day to fly to New York for a fucking house show? I feel like they should get the 26th off too. Put them back to work on the 27th. That way at least they have Christmas Day, Christmas night with their families, and they don't have to worry about getting up and hopping right on a plane. Give them an extra day. So the fact that they're doing a December 26th show, but it's not in Madison Square Garden, just tells me that Madison Square Garden is too expensive, and they just want to save a few bucks. So they're going to rent a cheaper arena to also sell it out and probably do a lot of the same type of matches, but it's just not going to be at Madison Square Garden anymore. And I think that sucks, because that tells me it just comes down to money. This is a company that's receiving billions from multiple different streaming and television platforms. They are receiving billions from Saudi Arabia, but the MSG rent might be $50K more, so they're not going to go there. I don't know. I'm just guessing there, but if I had to guess, that would be the reason. Unless MSG has already booked a show on the 26th for somebody else and they can't book WWE, but I feel like WWE would, be the priority there, especially since they've been used to running there for the last decade and a half. Now they're not doing it. It's got to all come down to money. What other reason would there be? What reason would there be to move it from Madison Square Garden to Baltimore if it didn't save WWE a few bucks to do it that way? Running Baltimore is probably cheaper than running Madison Square Garden. So anyway, no post-MSG show. And it was kind of a bucket list thing for me. I still want, even though I'm almost 50 years old, I still want to go to a wrestling show in Madison Square Garden one day. And I kind of thought that the day after Christmas show might be a good one to go to one day, but it's going to have to be some other show. I may never make it, guys. Also, want to send some well wishes out to Jerry the King Lawler. The 75-year-old Lawler suffered a stroke in Florida this past week or so at one of his homes down there. And according to his ex-fiance and caregiver, he is headed back to his primary residence in Memphis to recover, and he's already on the road to recovery and is doing okay. So Lawler, he's had some health issues already in the past. Of course, he almost died on Monday Night Raw back in 2012 when he suffered a heart attack right there during the show. And he would have been dead had he suffered that heart attack at home. The fact that he suffered that heart attack on TV when there was an ambulance and paramedics and EMTs 100 feet away, that man was very, very lucky. And he's had some other health issues since then. And now the latest issue with him is he suffered a stroke. So all the best to WWE Hall of Famer Jerry the King Lawler in his stroke recovery. That was pretty much all I had for the news, except for one other little fun story. So a couple of weeks ago, you guys saw those pictures that were floating around, right? of Triple H and Stephanie McMahon on vacation. They were on a boat. Triple H had his shirt off. Stephanie was in a bikini. Apparently their daughters were there with them as well. Well, according to Fightful Select, WWE might be trying to get some people in trouble for this. In early September, this is from Fightful Select, and I quote, Fightful learned that a number of people that had posted the pictures who claimed they received in early September, Fightful learned that a number of people that had posted the pictures claimed they received legal notices of some sort. We weren't told if this was simply a cease and desist or more, but it was intimated to us that it was the photo agency as opposed to WWE or the family. This is an important distinction. We're told that there were also a number of people in WWE that were frustrated and upset that the pictures emerged, calling it an invasion of privacy, regardless of technicalities involving legality. The claim was that they were paparazzi, snapped photos, and not released with permission. So, sorry, Triple H and Stephanie, there's nothing you can do about that. Think about how many pictures have been taken, of people on vacation and in the water and on boats and in bikinis by the paparazzi for years and years. I don't know what kind of grounds they have here. Now it's not like a Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee sex tape that was released or a Hogan sex tape that was released that's going to result in lawsuits and whatnot. This is a couple of paparazzi pictures. Apparently Triple H and Stephanie not happy about it, and now they want to cancel people. Well, they can't, so there's nothing you can do about that, guys. But apparently they were not happy about it, and they were sending out legal notices to not post the pictures. And okay, you're famous and you're worth millions and billions of dollars. And, if the price you got to pay for that type of fame is to maybe get a picture snapped of you, an unflattering picture snapped of you when you're on vacation, that's just the life. I love that picture of Elon Musk where he just looks like a big fat buttermilk biscuit. You think he's happy that that's out there? He's the richest man in the world. He can't stop that picture, and Triple H and Stephanie aren't going to be able to stop that picture of them either. So I did find that story a little bit amusing. I'm all for, I firmly believe that everybody should be left alone on vacation, and you should respect people's privacy and whatnot. But at the same time, I have no sympathy for them at all. I could fucking care less. So yeah, if you see somebody on vacation, don't take pictures of them, and post them on social media. You should try to respect people's privacy. But if anybody does violate that respect of privacy, and as long as the pictures aren't too damaging or too much of an invasion of privacy, I'm probably not going to care. And I didn't really care too much about Triple H and Stephanie's picture either. So I just thought that was a fun story, and I wanted to share it with you. So this past Monday on Raw, we were here. We did a Raw review on Monday night. And one of the things we mentioned was the AJ Styles promo that he cut during one of the Netflix commercial breaks. And it was really weird because he was talking about people like Gallows and Anderson not being in the company anymore. And Michin being over on SmackDown. And he said something to the effect of, it's clear that somebody doesn't want me here. So somebody doesn't want him here. And we found that kind of interesting. I'm like, was he just playing that up for the Netflix crowd? Like, what's going on there? But then WWE released that promo and uploaded it to their YouTube channel. So everybody has now seen it. And as we speculated, we talked about this on Monday night, and what we talked about might actually turn out to be true. So if I had to guess, you don't just go out there and cut a promo like that for no reason. Who is AJ Styles talking about? The way the promo was structured, it implied that he's talking about management or his higher ups in WWE, or maybe even perhaps Triple H himself. And one of the comparisons I drew on Monday night, we talked about this during the Raw review. I said, remember when Ric Flair retired? How they set that retirement up, if memory serves, it was all the way back in 2008. But I think I remember that the retirement match came to be because Vince McMahon and Ric Flair were in a little bit of a situation or whatnot. I don't know if they were feuding. That 2002 feud was long since over, but Vince was in the ring with Flair when he made the ruling, right? He said, the next time you lose a match, it's going to be your last match. So you lose and you're done. And Flair was winning his matches all the way up until that point, until they booked him in a match with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 24, which we all knew was going to be his retirement match. He went into the Hall of Fame the night before, and we knew even at the Hall of Fame, when he's crying and saying his goodbyes, we knew that the next night at WrestleMania would be his last match. It was one of those matches where you absolutely knew the outcome and you didn't care. You were there to see him off, to have him have that great match with Shawn Michaels, one of the best retirement matches of all time, if not the best. The following night on Raw, that wonderful send-off that he got. And of course, he fucked it all up when he went to TNA. But before that, that was all very well done, very beautiful. And I think every wrestler should aspire to have a retirement like that. And I got to wonder if this is setting up his retirement angle. We talked about AJ Styles. He was one of the stories we talked about last week on the podcast, because there has been talk about his contract and when it might be coming up. And the rumors are that it is up somewhere around February, which would make it expire prior to WrestleMania. So based on his promo on Monday night, if I had to guess, and I shouldn't say guess, if I had to hope, what my hope is that AJ Styles slightly extended his contract another 2 months, maybe 3, to get through WrestleMania. And his final match is going to be at WrestleMania. Maybe very similar to Ric Flair. And maybe if he's out here running his mouth on the mic enough, you have Triple H come out to the ring and say something similar to AJ that Vince said to Flair. And maybe Triple H says, I mean, you could do Adam Pearce. You know, you could definitely do Adam Pearce, but AJ seems to, this is kind of like a worked shooty type of promo here, or at least make the fans think that it is. And I don't know if Adam Pearce would really be that intriguing, because if he says things like, people don't want me here, that implies something like behind the curtain. That implies upper management, possibly even Triple H. So if you brought Triple H out for that, but if then Triple H is going to be some like asshole heel, Triple H can't get physical. He can't have matches, or at least we don't think he can, unless the doctors clear him, and he has one in Saudi in 2027. But Triple H being a part of this, maybe he comes out to the ring and he says something similar. All right, AJ, how about this? The next time you lose a match, that's going to be your final night in the company. And then AJ keeps winning. And then you book a match at WrestleMania against who? Against somebody, and that's AJ Styles' final match. He could sign on for another year and a half and get himself to Saudi Arabia. You got to think, if you're AJ Styles, you at least have to consider that. Do I want to extend it? Because WWE, I believe, will allow him to wrestle as long as he wants. I would hope anyway, based on, AJ and his career, that the ball is in his court type of thing. So however long he wants to go, they will let him go. Whatever you want. You tell us the day you want to stop working, and we'll do it. Maybe he says, I want to have my last match in Saudi Arabia at WrestleMania 27 against Shawn Michaels. That's what I want. Shit, I'd be into that. But if the Saudi WrestleMania isn't going to affect whatever they set up here on Monday night, this feels like a retirement angle, the beginning of the retirement angle for him. And I hope that they set something up for him to have his final match at WrestleMania, just like Ric Flair did. In the middle of the card on night 1 or night 2, doesn't matter where it is, doesn't have to be the main event or anything. You can still do a special retirement without it needing to be the main event. They did it for Flair. They can do it for AJ. And I'm hoping that that's what they're setting up here. And maybe you can even bring back Gallows and Anderson, since he did name drop them, to be a part of this. Maybe AJ says, hey, I want to do a retirement match at WrestleMania. Can we work out something creatively for me to do? Sure. Is there anybody you would like to work with? Anybody you would like to be a part of this? Yeah, man. Can we bring back Gallows and Anderson? And have them. I would like them with me when I retire. And maybe that's what they're all setting up here. So if AJ is setting up his retirement angle, and that is going to lead to an eventual retirement match in the future, leave your guesses or leave your suggestions to who the opponent could be. But I hope that that's what this is, because AJ being so close to the end here, this promo feels weird. It's weird unless there's, a bigger plan in place. And if this is the beginning, the seeds being planted for his retirement and exit story, then I'm all about it. Cena's going to have his retirement. Goldberg just had his retirement this summer. Cena's going to have it this December. Tanahashi's going to have it this January. Maybe. AJ Styles has his at WrestleMania. And maybe it's the same type of thing as Flair. Maybe he goes into the Hall of Fame the night before WrestleMania 42 in Vegas and has his retirement match that night. Because, the Hall of Fame in 2027, what are they going to do there? That's going to have to be in Saudi Arabia. So whoever goes into the Hall of Fame is going to have to be willing to travel to Saudi Arabia. Another thing we didn't mention is all those indie promotions and whatnot. What are they going to do? Are they going to all fly over there and run shows? That's going to be a morning WrestleMania. So there's a whole bunch of real estate at night, WrestleMania weekend, here in the States for big shows to happen. I jokingly put on social media that Tony Khan should run an Elite Mania 2-night event the same weekend as WrestleMania. Because WrestleMania is going to be in the morning, and then night 1 and night 2, you can run Elite Mania. On night 1, you can run a Jamal Khashoggi Memorial Battle Royal for the men. And then on night 2, you can run a women can wear whatever the fuck they want Battle Royal, where it's the sexiest and skimpiest gear that they want to wear and have a big Battle Royal with all these scantily clad women in it, just to show their expression. And book crazy matches, grab anybody who's not booked for Saudi, try to grab them, pay them money, and then donate all the proceeds to charity. Just all the proceeds to charity and make it like a celebration of wrestling involving promotions from Japan, Mexico, the US, Canada, bringing everybody that you can, all the biggest stars that you can possibly find that aren't already in WWE or in Saudi Arabia for WrestleMania, bring them all over here, run this big super card event, and make it a celebration of wrestling, while WWE is over there having a celebration of money. With all the counter programming that's going on, if I was TK, I would absolutely do something in 2027 up against WrestleMania, because they're going to be in the morning and you can run big time shows in the evenings, and WrestleMania weekend in 2027 might actually be pretty fun if it's loaded up with wrestling from every single promotion in the world. Might be kind of fun. So there might be a silver lining there with WrestleMania being in Saudi, kind of like I was looking at the silver lining next Saturday, because when the two shows were going head to head, I'm like, that's not totally ideal for every pay-per-view, but it would be kind of fun for the first time ever to watch two competing pay-per-views go head to head. We never got that with WWE and WCW or ECW. None of those PPVs ever went head to head. So that might be fun, but now we're not getting that. So maybe in Saudi Arabia in 2027, we can have a lot of fun. I got to start planning my streams. We're going to have to do early morning watch-alongs. I don't like them, but we're going to have to do them for WrestleMania. I'm going to have to get up and eat some eggs and bacon and all that stuff. We're going to do that in 2027. That's still 18 months away. Let's not worry too much about that. But anyway, the AJ promo on Raw was interesting, and it makes me think that they are setting up some sort of a retirement angle for him, and that makes me happy. Now, I don't often talk about NXT, but I feel like we got to talk about it this week, because on Tuesday on NXT, we had a lot of main roster appearances, and I wasn't sure what the hell was going on there. Turns out the reason we had all those appearances is because NXT is running their homecoming event this Tuesday, all the way back at Full Sail, where everything started. So that's really cool, and there's some big matches set for that. But on NXT this past week, we saw Tyler Breeze show up. Also, I think Carmelo Hayes made an appearance, and we had 3 major women from the main roster show up and confront Fatal Attraction or Fatal Influence? Rhea Ripley, Stephanie Vaquer, and Tiffany. Did you see that outfit she was wearing, Tiffany? My God. El Grande. How'd you do it? How'd you do it? How'd you do it, Ludwig? Teach us. So a lot of main roster talent on NXT. So on Homecoming this week, they've got Rhea Ripley, Tiffany Stratton, and Stephanie Vaquer taking on Fatal Influence. We've got Tyler Breeze. Really cool to see Gorgeous back. He's going to be taking on Ethan Page. I think that's for the title, right? North American title or whatever. Also, Carmelo Hayes is going to be teaming up with Trick Williams. They're going to be taking on DIY. And we're going to have a Waller effect with Ricky Starks and Oba Femi. So it looks like NXT's got a big homecoming show coming up this week, back at Full Sail, which I got to admit I might actually take a look at on Tuesday. Slightly interested in that. And it was cool to see all that big-time talent there in the PC on Tuesday night. All right, so let's now move to switch gears, if you will, to last night's SmackDown. Last night's SmackDown in the Norfolk Scope. And that's exactly where Nitro was, the night that DX invaded with the Jeep, demanding to let their people go, their POWCWs. Oh, man, what a time. I was there at that show, but I was at Raw in Hampton watching it all unfold on the Titantron, and that was now, 27 years ago. But back in the Norfolk Scope, Norfolk is easy to identify because of that ceiling they got, and I've been there for one or two shows in my life as well. But the show opens up with a Brock Lesnar promo, and, he didn't do really much or say anything to really build his match with John Cena, and now that John Cena has already had his final SmackDown, they're not going to have any more interactions until the pay-per-view. So what was the point of even having Brock Lesnar come out here if they're just relying on the star power of these two guys to build their issue? Now, they did run a wonderful video package on SmackDown last night, highlighting all of the history that dates back now, 22 years between John Cena and Brock Lesnar. So that was tremendous. But in terms of what we saw in the ring, did Brock really need to be here? He was interrupted by R-Truth, who was back to normal, back to being just goofy-ass R-Truth, singing his What's Up song when he comes out. And he says that, R-Truth says that Cena is a badass and he's going to take down Brock Lesnar because he made a kid cry. And he's not scared of you. And he's fueled by hustle, loyalty, respect, and the tears of children or something like that. And he says that Cena is his brother from another mother, but they have the same dad. And Brock kind of gets a kick out of that and then winds up just attacking R-Truth. Says, you're missing some teeth. And he goes, I am. And then he picks him up and nails him with the F5. And when he does, Brock Lesnar rips a big-ass hole in his jeans. So Brock's ass was showing and his blue underwear was showing for a minute. And he simply just F5'd R-Truth and left the ring. And then later on, they chronicled the history between Brock and Cena in that really, really well-done video package that I thought was great. But in terms of Brock's appearance on SmackDown, I didn't really see the point, and I don't really care much about seeing him back in WWE, to be honest, but he's there, and what can I do about it? Best match of the night last night by far was Sami Zayn defending the United States Championship in an open challenge against Rey Fenix. This was so good, so good. Loved this match, and I hope that they allow Sami Zayn to run with this open challenge a little longer, and this might be just the thing he needs to give him that momentum into the Royal Rumble, because a lot of fans believe that he's going to win the Royal Rumble and then win the championship at WrestleMania. Unless they want to hold it off and have him win next year in Saudi Arabia at WrestleMania 43, that could happen, but we have the Rumble in Saudi Arabia this year, and Sami winning there seems like it could be very, very likely. But until then, what does Sami do? He won the United States Championship. He beat Solo Sikoa for it, and now he's running through these open challenges. Had the match with Cena last week. Victorious here against Rey Fenix in a tremendous match, and I believe he set up later on in the night a match with Carmelo Hayes for the title next week. So Sami, that should be another great one. So I'm hoping that this U.S. Open Challenge is really fun. I really hope that it's something that they can run with for several weeks and maybe even carries Sami as far as into the holidays before dropping the championship and refocusing his efforts on the World Championship and heading into the Royal Rumble. But between now and then, if he just has banger after banger every week and he's got all these great successful title defenses and his matches are good, I think that can keep the fans on his side, because I am worried a little bit about maybe the fans turning on him. We did hear some boos last week in Chicago, but that was also because he was in the ring with John Cena, and we didn't hear too many boos last night. But a lot like Cody, I feel like Sammy is riding that line where the fans could turn on him at any moment. I feel like Jey Uso might be that way as well, even though he still has that very over entrance. That finish on Monday night kind of insinuated that they might be turning him heel down the road as well. We don't know. But Sami Zayn, big win here, and I'm hoping that we get this U.S. Open Challenge for a few more weeks, because I think Open Challenges sometimes can be a lazy way of booking things, but sometimes they can also be really good. And I think this is one of the instances there where Sammy is almost tributing John Cena, because John Cena's U.S. Open Challenge 10 years ago was a lot of fun. So bringing it back here and having Sammy do it, and maybe even doing it as well, if not better, than Cena did a decade ago, that can only help Sammy's stock heading into 2026 and hopefully World Championship gold. Speaking of World Championship gold, Tiffany Stratton put her title on the line last night against Jade Cargill. Both ladies were counted out when Jade speared Tiffany through the barricade. So a double count out there. Nia Jax then shows up and takes out both women, and I'm just glad that they actually got technically a finish here, and it wasn't just a DQ finish. Instead, it was a count-out finish, and with the spear through the barricade, that sets them up to probably have yet another rematch, and maybe they add something to Palooza. I don't think so. Probably not, but I feel like it might just wind up being a triple threat at some point, and they might even just book that on SmackDown between the three ladies down the line. Chelsea Green and Alba Fire backstage secured themselves a title shot versus Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss, but Charlotte and Alexa, I believe, are defending the titles at Homecoming as well, right? Don't they have a match over there? Did I hear that right? So I think they got the winners of that on NXT will face Chelsea and Alba, and I believe that'll be next week on SmackDown. And we don't know still where Piper Niven is. So this match next week is going to involve Chelsea and Alba. And if Piper is back and everything's fine, they might be saving her to show up next week and maybe help them out and get the win. I don't know. But whatever's going on with Piper Niven, I hope everything is all right. The main event was Drew McIntyre taking on Randy Orton. Drew McIntyre got the win here when he was about to get punt kicked by Randy Orton, and the referee absolutely refuses to allow Randy Orton to kick Drew McIntyre, so Randy is yelling at the referee. McIntyre comes in to nail Randy Orton, and Randy Orton stops so he doesn't hit the referee, and as he turns around, McIntyre nails him right in the face with a Claymore. Referee counts 3. McIntyre gets the win. Then he continues the beatdown on Randy Orton, pulls him on the outside of the ring, and sets him up against the announce table, and he's prepared to Claymore him through the table, just like he did to Cody a couple of weeks ago, or a few weeks ago, when American Nightmare hits. Cody's music plays. Out comes Cody Rhodes. He attacks Drew McIntyre, takes him out. Drew retreats. And with just a couple of seconds to spare in the show, Cody gets on the mic and says, "I will see you at WrestlePalooza." So in the nick of time, we are in fact getting that Cody and Drew match. I thought they might be saving that for Perth at Crown Jewel, but last night Cody came back and laid down the challenge to McIntyre for WrestlePalooza, and that match is now all but official. And we'll run through that WrestlePalooza card in just a minute. But before we do that, we got to talk about Worlds Collide. Man, oh man, we got to talk about Worlds Collide. So last night, Dominic Mysterio defeated Vikingo to win the AAA Mega Championship. This was a lot of fun. This match was actually pretty good. WWE streamed this live on YouTube across all of their platforms, and they even uploaded each individual match in their entirety on YouTube as well. So I was able to kind of watch the matches last night individually, which was kind of nice. And Dominic, of course, he had lots of help. Judgment Day, who initially told him that they were going to make him do it on his own, they all ran out there along with El Grande Americano, who showed up and pulled out the referee when Vikingo had Dominic pinned. And in the end, Andrade wound up, El Grande wound up passing the little metal thing that he puts in his mask, slides it in the ring to Dominic, who has now put on a lucha mask of his own, and he uses that to take out Vikingo and then hit him with the splash for the win after hitting him with a flying headbutt with the loaded mask. and Dominic wins the AAA Mega Championship. He celebrates with all of his Judgment Day teammates. Some of them had matches tonight or last night as well, and really happy for Dominic securing that championship. It was fun. I'm very happy for him. And the crowd in Vegas, I should mention that Worlds Collide was in Vegas last night. The crowd was very, very pro-Dominic throughout the whole thing, and that was fun. Also, Corey Graves, JBL, and Conan were on the call for this show, and it looked like it was a lot of fun. Another one of my favorite parts from last night was the tag team match. Now, it was supposed to be Pagano and Psycho Clown taking on the New Day, but Xavier Woods had surgery on his head to cut out a chunk of lymphoma or something. He posted a very graphic pic of a scar that didn't really look like it was that bad, but a big chunk of meat that they had pulled out of his head. He's blaming Penta for this and all of his destroyers. That's the reason he had to have surgery on his head, but he was not cleared to compete last night. So Grayson Waller took his place and teamed up with Kofi Kingston. They were unsuccessful in winning the AAA Tag Team Championships. Pagano and Psycho Clown did retain, but the coolest part was after the match, the lights went out and out came the Wyatt Six. That's cool because Pagano and Psycho Clown are nuts, and out comes this faction that's even more nuts. They hit the ring, they attack Pagano and Psycho Clown, and they pose. The Wyatt Six poses with not only their WWE Tag Team Championships, but the AAA Tag Team Championships as well. Natalya won a number one contenders match last night for the AAA Reina de Reinas Championship, and she defeated Fabi Apache. So Natalya, I'm loving this gimmick that she's doing outside of WWE. I wish that they would use her more in WWE, but it's been really fun watching this little side hustle of hers, and I like it. I like it a lot, and I'm really hoping that she winds up winning the championship when she gets her title opportunity. And also in a mixed tag, we had Mr. Iguana. He's back at it again with Finn Balor. It was Iguana and Lola Vice defeating Finn Balor and Roxanne Perez. We had the puppets out for this thing. Big backhand from Lola to Roxanne for the win there. And overall, Worlds Collide looked like a pretty fun show, and I watched all of the Dominic and Vikingo match. I watched all of the Natalya match and parts of the tag and the mixed tag, and that's pretty much all I saw of Worlds Collide last night. But congrats to Dominic. Loving me some Dominic. He's the best. So anyway, here's what we have set now for Palooza. We've got 5 matches, and it looks like it's probably going to only be 5 unless they tack one on Raw on Monday, which they might. So we have, as announced last night on SmackDown, last minute, it's going to be Cody Rhodes defending his WWE Championship against Drew McIntyre. We also have John Cena versus Brock Lesnar. We're going to have Io Sky taking on Stephanie Vaquer for the vacant Women's World Championship. We also have the Usos reuniting to take on Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed in a tag team match. And in the mixed tag, AJ Lee and her husband, CM Punk, taking on Becky Lynch and her husband, Seth Rollins. So that's how Palooza is shaping up right now. 5 matches, possibly 6, but it's probably only going to be 5. Let's talk a little bit about Dynamite this past week. This is the final Dynamite in the 2300 arena. And it was an okay show, but there was, a couple things on the show that I was just like, I don't know. They're setting up All Out, of course, and Hangman Page is going to be defending the championship against somebody. And we knew it was going to be a member of the Don Callis family, but we really didn't totally know until Wednesday's Dynamite, as Hangman Page defeated Josh Alexander in a one-on-one match. Hangman then gets on the microphone, and that's when he's interrupted by Kyle Fletcher. The two of them set up their match at All Out. We talked about Wardlow last week being injured, which sucks. There was a report coming out earlier that Wardlow was in line to get this title shot, but it doesn't sound like that was the case. Fletcher, I believe, was planned the whole time. And what that match kind of reminds me of, it reminds me of Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels Survivor Series 1992. is what Hangman Page versus Kyle Fletcher kind of reminds me of. I feel like it's going to be a match kind of like that. I feel like it's an incredibly predictable match where Hangman is going to win, against the, up-and-comer Kyle Fletcher, a man that could be, the face of the industry one day, but he's not there yet, and Hangman is probably going to teach him a lesson and beat him. Kyle Fletcher is the TNT champion, just like Shawn Michaels was the Intercontinental champion when he faced Bret Hart at Survivor Series 1992. And I feel like the match is going to be similar. And it doesn't really necessarily need to be the main event because I don't think Hangman is going to be dropping the championship here. So I'm fine with the match. I'm interested in it. It's a new match. And plus, I'm a big fan of Kyle Fletcher, and I love to watch his rise. I've been loving watching his rise and how good he's getting and the comparisons to other wrestlers like Randy Orton that he's drawing. Here's one person you should not listen to, Stevie Richards. I have never heard in my life a more asinine critique of a wrestler ever. What kind of fucking world are we living in where we're listening to Stevie Richards and fucking Bubba Ray Dudley and shit, and Stevie Richards is just, his YouTube channel is just insufferable. Here's a guy that never did jack shit. He was contracted to the 3 big promotions. He worked WCW, he worked WWE, he worked ECW, but he never really found any big-time success. He never really got out of the mid-card. I always liked Stevie Richards. I always thought he came across like a very intelligent guy, but man, his shit is just so clickbaity, and Kyle Fletcher is doing so many things right. And the way these old-timers, saying that Kyle Fletcher needs to learn how to work, shut the fuck up. God, they are all like that. They are so insufferable. Brett is no better really either. He's calls Gunther not a very good wrestler, and, some of the greatest matches of all time, he calls a 4 out of 10. So you just have these just silly opinions. But, Stevie Richards went out of his way to make a YouTube video that he knows is going to get a lot of clicks from the anti-AEW anger boys with nothing in the fucking world to live for whatsoever, other than being a sniveling little fucking prick online. That's it. And he knows he's going to get a lot of clicks and a lot of praise from those fans. Yeah, he needs to learn how to work. Yeah. And that's it. It's just such a silly grift. And it's just so pathetic. Stevie Richards, shut up. Shut up. Shut the fuck up. Fletcher will see more success and make more money in his career than you did. He will. He will. But in terms of the match at All Out, Hangman and Fletcher, it's okay. I think it's going to be a good match, a super fun match, but it's also going to be a really predictable one. And, the card at All Out is, it's fine, but, I don't even know if it's, and it's going to be a great pay-per-view. Like, all the matches are going to be good. When it's over, we're going to be like, that was a good show. I think it'll be better than Forbidden Door, which might have been a little bit on the disappointing side. But, all in all, the card really isn't standing out as anything too spectacular. And when you have a WWE show on later that night on a free streaming app, I think AEW is going to take a hit on their pay-per-view buys for this one. I do. But that doesn't mean I'm not in favor of the Hangman Fletcher match. I am. I just don't know, what kind of numbers they're going to pull for that for All Out. Also, on Wednesday night, randomly, Emi Sakura is back. I don't think she's been on AEW television since 1988, something like that. So we saw her back. Mercedes and Emi were defeated by Riho, who made her in-ring return as well last week, and Alex Windsor. And, of course, Mercedes will be taking on Riho at All Out. The FTR segment was weird. I feel like this was just kind of done for the ECW arena. It was a little bit reminiscent to how the Dudleys used to run their mouth to the crowd, and Bubba would say some really horrible shit to the people in the front row. Dax was kind of doing that to fans, goading them into a fight, which you got to be careful these days, as we learned on that very day, as we learned on Wednesday, September 10th. This world is violent and ugly. And I would be careful doing that type of stuff, because one of these days somebody is going to hop over the barricade and they're going to have real professional fighting experience, and they're going to expose a pro wrestler. So just be careful with the fans that you're insulting and that you're begging to fight them. But they did the whole thing there. No Cope and Christian even on the show. This was all FTR just fucking with the fans. And I feel like this was kind of done as a tribute to how some of those promos used to go back in the ECW arena back in the day. Ricochet picked up a win on Wednesday over Shelton Benjamin. He had some help from the Gates of Agony, and of course, there's a big 6-man set for All Out there. The Philly Street Fight was wild between Toni Storm and Sky Blue. This match was for the sickos, and that's totally fine. We had people's asses getting stapled. Toni Storm did the Sandman entrance, smashing the can or whatever that was up against her face to come out. I really enjoyed that. Toni did defeat Sky Blue in this Philly Street Fight. After the match, Tekla and Julia Hart attacked Toni Storm. Chris Statlander and Jamie Hayter run out to make the save, but in the end, it was Tekla taking out Toni Storm. And I was kind of hoping that Toni and Tekla might just be a one-on-one match at All Out, but of course, we're getting that big four-way. The main event on Dynamite was one of these big $500,000 10-man all-star tag team Dynamite main events. A 2-sentence long match here. It was the Death Riders and the Young Bucks defeating Brodito and the Ops. We had a big post-match beatdown here. Darby Allin shows up to try to help, and he gets nailed from behind by a hooded figure. The hooded figure takes off the hood to reveal that it's Daniel Garcia turning heel and joining the Death Riders. And the crowd goes mild. My God, crickets. Absolute crickets. I liked Garcia joining. They've been kind of teasing this for a while. I'm hoping this is something that can help his status in the company and give him something fresh to do. But the Death Riders angle has been going on now for a year. And here we're thinking that it's going to kind of run its course and disband, and here they are adding members. So the Death Riders angle isn't going anywhere. As a matter of fact, they're adding motherfuckers to the group, and Daniel Garcia might not be the only one. But in terms of that surprise on Wednesday night, it was all right. And it was also botchy because he went to do the thing with the chair onto Darby, and he fucked it up, and he had to redo it to get it right. And joined the Death Riders. So all of that is fine, but and Dynamite on Wednesday night was fine, just like the All Out card looks fine, but it needs to be more than fine. This company right here has an opportunity right now. It's an ongoing opportunity that's unraveling before their eyes. WWE, is making a lot of business decisions that are just starting to turn off a portion of the audience. And that snowball could grow if they keep doing this shit and their product gets shittier and more creatively lazy and they start relying on too many legends and just all the things that they kind of been doing lately that have just felt uninspiring. The last thing in the world AEW needs to be doing is doing the same shit. You need to step up here, and WWE, would do the same thing. If one company is, maybe experiencing some fan critiques or backlash, you got to try to capitalize on that. WWE's got outrageous ticket prices, and they do so many things that's just kind of a turnoff to their audience members. You should try to make your product as good as you can in order to attract some of those turned off viewers of the other team. And I don't feel like they're doing it right now. Like I said, the Garcia turn was fine and everything, and Dynamite was fine, but it's got to be more than fine. And All Out, the card looks fine. Now, knowing AEW the way we know them, the pay-per-view is going to be great. When it's over, we're going to be like, man, that was fucking great. There's some great matches. It was a good show, worth my $50. Absolutely. But there's nothing here that, to me is a pendulum swinger, is really a needle mover. And Tony Khan has got to recognize when the big dogs are hitting the skid, that's when you got to pounce. I don't have the answers. I don't know how you do that. I don't know what exactly AEW should be doing. I think they should be trying to book as compelling of TV as they can, compelling stories, compelling characters, and setting up good matches on pay-per-view instead of just bringing back Emi Sakura randomly to wrestle on Dynamite. You might have to just think outside the box here, and try to shock us like you used to. I mean, it's hard to do that. It's going to be hard to ever. What was it, 3 years ago at All Out when Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson showed up back to back, having moments like that obviously are very, very cool. But I think AEW really needs to take a creative look at themselves and be able to put themselves in a position to make sure that they are putting forth the very best possible product that they can, especially when their competition is doing a lot of things that is causing them a lot of negative feedback. Financially, they're crushing it, and they're making more money and more millions than ever. But in terms of the audience appreciation and all of that, that is, starting to dwindle a little bit. And you're going to see that in the ratings, and you're eventually going to see that in the attendance as well. Because these prices, they're not going to be able to charge that forever. You are going to see a dip. As a matter of fact, when I looked at Wrestle tickets, I think Monday Night Raw is kind of struggling a little bit for Monday night. There's still a few thousand tickets left available for that show. So that stuff is going to happen. And I feel like as a fan, I need to see more out of AEW than what we're seeing, because it's fine to tune in on Wednesday night and watch Dynamite. But like I said about Raw and SmackDown too, nothing is must see. Nothing is must see. Back, in the Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars, Raw would leave you wanting more. 2 hours sometimes didn't feel like long enough. I couldn't wait till the next week's Raw. And in the early days, you couldn't wait until the next week's Nitro. Those were times to where, you were so excited as a wrestling fan that you wanted more when it was over. But now the products and pro wrestling is just so watered down in general, you never get that feeling anymore. And I think AEW has the better chance of achieving that feeling, since Dynamite is their flagship show, and nobody really watches Collision, not as much as Dynamite anyway. So, they should make their Dynamites, try to book them in a way to where when it's over, the fans cannot wait until next week's Dynamite. And I'm just not seeing anything out of them right now. And the thing about AEW is they got all the talent and all the ability, for these 8 matches at All Out, which I'll read through in a second. They are probably 90% of them, if not more, are going to be bangers. And we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about how great they all were. But, it's almost like it's not great enough. It's got to be better. They have to be better. And I actually thought the 2300 Arena residency was only 2 weeks, so I was really surprised to see them back there on Wednesday. I thought it was over. I didn't realize that it was for 3. I must have just misread that. So I'm glad that the 2300 Arena residency is over, because I felt like that building was just a little bit too small. I'm fine with smaller buildings and special arenas and doing something in the old ECW arena. All that's fine. It's just the timing of those shows felt a little bit weird. And especially next week on Dynamite, we have September to Remember. Why didn't they do the September to Remember shows during the 2300 Arena shows? Next week, it's going to be a 3-hour block of Dynamite and a 1-hour Collision. So a normal 2-hour Dynamite followed by a 1-hour Collision this coming Wednesday, September to Remember. So it's funny that the minute that they leave the 2300 Arena, now they're booking a September to Remember Dynamite, when they should have booked that in the 2300 Arena, because ECW used to run November to Remembers back in the day. So just the timing on that feels weird. Like some of this shit in both companies, it feels like they just don't think stuff all the way through sometimes. And, why didn't they just figure out a way to do the September to Remember in the 2300 Arena instead of that way? I don't know. These companies sometimes confuse me. But anyway, here's what we have for the final 2300 Arena show tonight on Collision, which was taped, I believe, on Thursday. We're going to get Kazuchika Okada versus Michael Oku in a qualifying match for the Unified Championship. So it's basically this is so bizarre. It's another reason why AEW just sometimes I'm like, what the fuck are they doing? Like, what are they thinking? Both companies do this. They make me just like scratch my head. I'm like, wait, what? But wait. Wait a second here. Okada is the Unified Championship, or is the Unified Champion. They're going to have a 3-way at All Out for the championship. It's going to be a 3-way match for the Unified title. They're holding a tournament, a mini tournament, to determine the 3 participants in that 3-way match. One of the participants in the tournament is the champion, Kazuchika Okada, who has to face Michael Oku tonight in order to qualify for the triple threat match. I'm going to spoil something here for you. Okada wins, okay? He wins tonight. This is the only spoiler I'm going to give you. But the only reason I'm giving you that spoiler is because no fucking shit he's going to win. You mean to tell me that Okada, if he loses to Michael Oku, then Michael is now the unified champion, and he goes in to All Out to face the other three guys, or the other two guys? Huh? So when they book this match, you know Okada's going to win. They're not going to take the title off of him prior to the match even happening. So it's just another one of those things where, Tony Khan might be up late, on his 9th espresso and thinks this sounds like a good idea, but it doesn't. Somebody's got to speak up and be like, TK, why would Okada be in this when he's already the champion? Why don't you just have him in the match and then have a couple of other matches to determine the two challengers that he's going to face? Like, why do it this way? That's so weird. So you've got Okada versus Michael Oku tonight on Collision. And then Wednesday on the September to Remember, you've got the Beast Mortos versus Mascara Dorada. So the winner of that will advance to the unified match. And then next week on Collision, I believe 1 week from tonight, I think, you've got Takeshita taking on Anthony Bowens. So my belief is that it's going to be the Beast Mortos versus Takeshita versus Okada for the unified title at All Out. But my God, are they taking a very, very weird road to get there. So the fact that Okada is a part of this tournament, essentially the championship is on the line then, right? Like tonight when Okada faces Oku, technically the title will be on the line. Because if Oku wins, then Okada can't be the champion going, I don't know. But isn't that stupid? Like, doesn't that sound like the dumbest fucking thing you've ever heard? It does to me. That's why I don't care that I spoiled that match for you. Yeah, Okada's going to win. Why even have that match? Why even do that? Why book a match? It's literally one of the most predictable matches in the history of the pro wrestling business. Okada versus Oku tonight. So why do it? Also on Collision, you're going to see Roddy Strong and Kyle O'Reilly. They're going to be taking on Moxley and his new buddy, Daniel Garcia, in a tag team match. Also, Adam Priest teaming up with the wonderfully awesome Tommy Billington. My God, I love him. They're going to be taking on FTR. That actually is probably going to be a pretty good match. And we have another one of those $500,000 5-on-5 Collision women's matches, or Collision matches involving women. I lost the graphic, but it's all of them. It's Megan Bayne and Penelope. Toni Storm's going to be on commentary, and I forgot who's in it. Doesn't matter. 10 women tonight in a big $500,000 match. And then Mark Briscoe is going to pick the stipulation for his match with MJF at All Out, which I did take a look at what that stipulation is. I don't know. Anyway, here's what we have for All Out. I have currently 8 matches written down for this that I see official. Of course, right there on your screen, Hangman Page versus Kyle Fletcher for the AEW World Championship. We're also going to get Jon Moxley versus Darby Allin. This is going to be a coffin match. That's actually going to be pretty good. Of course, we got CNC, Cope and Christian. They're going to be taking on FTR. Very good chance that could be the main event. With a predictable title match like this with Page and Fletcher, I would not be surprised if the Toronto audience gets Cope and Christian versus FTR. But, the wheels kind of fell off of that match too, because we thought that was going to be for the championship. We thought FTR would beat Hurt Syndicate, Cope and Christian versus FTR for the titles. But there's no championships on the line at all. And Cope and Christian weren't even on Dynamite on Wednesday night. But they'll probably be on the show this Wednesday for September to Remember. Also, Mercedes Moné defending her TBS title against Riho. The Hurt Syndicate will be taking on the Gates of Agony and Ricochet. Toni Storm defending in a 4-way against Jamie Hayter, Chris Statlander, and Tekla. And we have that 3-way unified title match, which I believe will be Okada versus Takeshita versus Mortos. And then we have MJF versus Jay Briscoe in a something and something match at All Out. And I'll let you guys watch Collision tonight to learn what that stipulation is. So even though on paper that card isn't standing out as one of the greatest pay-per-view cards ever, I still think you got some very good matches on that card and the potential for greatness here. I think Hangman and Fletcher is going to be awesome. I think Mox and Darby is going to be awesome. I have high hopes, if you like violent stuff, for MJF and Briscoe. It's going to be very nostalgic and fun to see Cope and Christian teaming up. And, I feel like the women's match, maybe not Mercedes and Rio. Mercedes and Riho, I think, will be good, but Riho is just a name to put out there for Mercedes to beat. I think the four-way could be a lot more fun. It's Tekla on pay-per-view, and that's an interesting foursome there. I think they can have a lot of fun. And a match like that four-way match, when you look at it on paper, you do realize how healthy the women's division is in AEW. I feel like the women could be given, more time and exposure and things like that in the company for sure. But in terms of the talent that they have, they're fine. They got a good roster of women there, a real good roster of women. And that's a good looking four-way match here. So we will be doing our predictions for All Out and WrestlePalooza, like I said, this coming Thursday, and I will have a link up for that video probably tonight, later tonight, early tomorrow. You will see that up on the channel, so join us on Thursday. So that's kind of the end of my notes there. I'll head over here to the chat and see what you guys have to say. If anybody has not smashed that thumbs up button for me, please do so, and we'll answer a few questions before I get out of here. And I want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. Okay, thank you for that update. Ryan Adams has an update from our buddy, John Alba, who provided an update on Andrade. And thank you for the $10, Ryan. Andrade was released by WWE, and the decision was not mutual, nor was it related to budget cuts. It is not clear if Andrade requested his release. Okay, so he was released. Apparently, it was not mutual, nor it was due to budget cuts. So it might have been, maybe there was a reason. Now, I had speculated earlier that maybe Andrade wants out, and he approached WWE about a release, and out of respect for Andrade, they granted him a release. Sounds like that's not the case. Sounds like they released him. And like I said earlier, I was hoping we would learn more information here this weekend, and we've already gotten some information on that. So that is an interesting tidbit. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Ryan. I'm going to go. I can't see all of the chat there, so I'm going to go and make sure I don't miss any super chats here in our master list there. Oh, yeah, there we go. I got the one from Luke. Jonathan Cantris earlier on, thank you for the 5. I think Dom's heel run is done after becoming double champ. The Judgment Day, will turn on him, and he'll have no choice but to reconcile with Rey against them. Possibly, fans are loving Dominic. Rey Mysterio had to put the belt on his son last night, so at some point you think we got to get a reconciliation with Rey, but I like Dom as a heel. Part of the reason why Dom is so entertaining is because he is a heel. You know what I mean? And I worry that if he turned him face, he wouldn't be as fun. Terry Allen Jr., appreciate the $3. 2027 Saudi deal ends. Maybe no deal after, we hope. Yeah, so I guess the original 10-year deal that they inked up, in 2017 is going to end in 2027. But I seriously doubt the Saudi and WWE relationship will be done. I feel like it's going to continue until Saudi Arabia eventually owns the company. I really think that WWE will eventually be sold over there. I do. Reading through some of these. Yeah, Tyler Breeze is not aged. He looked great. I like Tyler Breeze as a worker, but I really, really hated his gimmick, just the selfie sticks and all that. I remember just being like, oh, brother. But he was good, and he was funny. That Fashion Police stuff that he did, he was an entertaining guy, and I'm glad that he's getting a match back for Homecoming. That's fun. Thank you for that reminder, Rodrigo. Last night, it was Booker T and Vic Joseph on SmackDown because Michael Cole, I don't know where he was, and Joe Tessitore was in Vegas doing the Mania announcement, so they had the NXT guys, Joseph and Booker, calling SmackDown last night. I should have mentioned that earlier. Thanks for the reminder. I'm loving Bo Dallas, outside of his Uncle Howdy gear because he really, really does look and sound like Bray Wyatt. And you can see his brother's mannerisms in him. It's eerie, but also kind of comforting in a way. It feels like Bray, in a way, is still with us, through his brother. You see, Matt, I believe Garcia has potential. Like, I don't think he's can't cut a promo. Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean can't cut a promo? Like, what does that mean exactly? I've heard him talk. He talks fine. You know, like, he just hasn't been put in any sort of situations to really let him excel, but maybe this is something that he can do. Maybe being a heel on the mic is a lot easier than being a face. So, you know, and he tried to get that stupid dance over, and that didn't work, and his TNT championship run was pointless, it felt like, and that didn't help get him on the map at all. So hopefully this can be better, but Garcia's got potential. Garcia's likable. He can definitely be successful, but, you know, hopefully he can hit a home run here. But can't cut a promo, total bore. Totally disagree. Totally disagree. Oh, Max, thank you. So happy for Dom. At least AEW didn't sell out. Yeah, well, WWE sold out, but that's the world is all about selling out, you know? Like, if Saudi Arabia has offered any of you guys a couple $1,000,000 to make a trip over there and get in the ring and take a spear from Goldberg, you'd do it. I would too, and I'd gladly take Saudi's money, you know? That's just the way it is. It sucks, but it's the way it is. Yo, Juliet, good to see you. Good to see Daniel Mendiola in here as well. Harris Hero, 5 years you've been following us. Thank you so much for that, my friend. Oh, yeah, Cole was in Vegas. Oh, yeah, Graves was doing Worlds Collide. That's right. Graves was doing Worlds Collide with... It's hard to keep track of all these guys. They need to start tagging them so we know where everybody is. But Graves was doing Worlds Collide with JBL and Conan. Vic Joseph and Booker were on SmackDown last night. Cole was in Vegas, but I don't remember seeing him at the press conference. He might have been there. Or the lack of press conference, I should call it. I didn't know where Cole was. Can WWE pull a WrestleMania 7 and change venue? Maybe. Juliet, you wouldn't take a spear from Goldberg in Saudi Arabia for $5 million? Well, I'll tell you what. I'll take 2 of them, and I'll take your $5 million, and I'll make $10 million. How about that? You don't have to go. I'll do it. I'll take your $5 million. No problem. I'll do it. I'll do it. I mean, how bad can a spear from old man Goldberg hurt anyway? Reading through some of these, talking about Triple H's beer gut and all that stuff. Yeah, between the WrestleMania 43 and Saudi stuff and the Brock Lesnar stuff and this disgustingly gross Vince McMahon lawsuit and then all the WWE stars that went to his birthday party, you know, it's just like there's no way they're not going to alienate some fans over this, you know. And, yesterday on social media was a complete shit show because, you know, fans who are, you know, expressing their displeasure with Saudi, you got the assholes. You got the assholes out there that are searching all these people out, yelling at them, you know, calling them retards and libtards and all that stuff for, you know, not liking the Saudi announcement. And I'm like, what is your life? That these are the things that enrage you. And I've talked about that before when it comes to, you know, stuff like the Vince McMahon lawsuit and all these just assholes. This male loneliness epidemic is stronger than ever on social media, I swear, because it's never women doing this. It's always boys. It's always anger boys searching out people and yelling at them for being snowflakes and all this stuff without even, like, the fact that they can't understand why some fans might be a little bit turned off by the Saudi announcement. And they get so enraged. If you don't like it, don't watch. You're still going to watch. You know, like, that's such a overly stupid and unoriginal response to that stuff. You know, it's okay to be disappointed in it. You know, to say, well, you're still going to watch. Well, yeah, I make money off covering WWE. Of course I'm going to watch WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia. I kind of have to. That doesn't mean I have to like it. You know, think of all the sports leagues out there. You watch baseball, don't you? You watch football. You complain about every fucking coach. The commissioner gets booed out of the building on every draft. You know, no matter what draft you're doing, basketball, football, baseball, you bring that commissioner out there and people are throwing tomatoes at them. This is just the way it is. And the fact that these fans, don't call them fans, the fact that these boys go online and search out people critical of the Saudi announcement and then yell at them, you know, like, what is wrong with your brain that you can't understand why some fans might have an issue with murders and de facto dictatorships. Why is that so hard for you to wrap your head around? It's just so bizarre. It amazes me how they just don't give a shit. They don't care that Vince McMahon craps in somebody's hair. He's their hero, and then if anybody complains about the Saudi Arabia thing, oh, you're just a snowflake, blah, 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 and they just go on the attack mode. I got a DM from some asshole yesterday just telling me to eat shit, retard. I'm like, okay. The day I send a DM like that to a complete stranger is the day I realize I have nothing to live for. At all. At all. And all of that discourse yesterday, everybody talking about the Saudi deal, not one woman was running out there calling anybody a retard or anything like that. It's all boys. One very specific type of anger boy. MAGA shit all over their profile. AI pictures of Charlie Kirk and Hogan getting into heaven together. That type of shit. And it was just all over. I'm like, can't you just understand where the fans are coming from? Nobody is saying that, some people might be completely turned off by WWE anymore and they're not going to watch them. That's their prerogative, but to hear the criticisms or the disappointment from fans who don't really love the idea of seeing a WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia, and the fact that you can't understand why they might feel that way. You have absolutely no ability to relate or understand that when it should be really easy to understand. Why some people might have a moral dilemma with this. Should be one of the easiest things for a human being to understand, but they can't understand it. They don't want to understand it. They want to go on attack mode. They got nothing going on in their life, so they're going to go around and insult as many people as they can because they live on social media. And that's the way it was all day yesterday with the Saudi stuff. And I'm like, how in the world can you look at the situation and not get where some fans are coming from? How can you not process that? Should be the easiest thing for somebody to understand, but it's real hard for the anger boys to understand. Why? Because they're anger boys and nothing else matters to them other than being an anger boy. Because being a sniveling asshole feels like power to weak and insecure and pathetic men. I cannot push that statement enough. Because it's true. So for the fans yelling at other fans for being disappointed about the announcement, what's wrong with you? You don't understand where they might be coming from. You don't understand why they might feel that way. It's still fine to disagree with them, but it doesn't matter. They're just an automatic disagreement, right from the word go when it comes to that stuff. And that's just a little bit weird to me. So anyway, my final message is, hey, WWE's going to Saudi Arabia, and it's your decision how you decide to move forward with that in terms of your support for WWE and where your line is. And if you reach that line. I haven't reached my line yet, but I feel like it's close. So we will just have to see. But anyway, I got to get out of here, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out this afternoon. It's been fun as always. Don't forget, we will be back here tomorrow night to watch WWE Unforgiven 2000. Make sure you're here for that tomorrow evening, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. We will be up here to watch that fun pay-per-view and watch Stone Cold return to the WWE after his neck surgery, looking for the motherfucker that ran him down. So we will be doing that tomorrow night. You guys have a great rest of your Saturday evening, and I'll be catching you tomorrow night for the watch-along. Have a good one. Thanks, guys. Peace.